Well, hello. I look forward to meeting you and hopefully to seeing you all in September 2021. My name is Lucy Duran. I have been at SOAS for many years now. I specialize in the music of West Africa, particularly from Mali, where I've done a lot of research for over many years and produced many albums by some great musicians, which has given me a lot of insight into the way that music works in that part of the world. And I also work in Cuba, and those are the regional courses that I teach. But what I want to do today is to share with you some ideas that we give as a way, as a sort of means of learning about music. And I think this will give you a sense of our approach to music study, music learning, and learning about the world through music, and in particular through musical instruments. So what I'm going to do is to share a bit of to share a PowerPoint with you, just to give you some idea of what we do in a core course for first year undergraduates who are studying BA Music and another subject, or who are simply interested in music. Maybe you will be doing a degree in another department of SOAS, but you're also interested in music, and we welcome both of you. But of course, we particularly want you to join us for BA Music as a joint honors. So without further ado, I would like to share a screen. So Sounds and Cultures, that is the title of the core course for BA Music Studies that I convene, that I teach. And in that course, we look at global music from around the world, in particular from Asia, Africa, and its diasporas, through musical instruments. So this is the cover of the course, Sounds and Cultures. There I am, Lucy Duran. You see there's an accent. That's because I am of Spanish heritage. And the course is a first year core course for BA Music and another subject. Popular combinations are BA Music and Anthropology, BA Music and a Language. But you can also take Sounds and Cultures as a guided option if you're doing BA Creative Arts, which is equally a marvelous program. So actually, before I continue with this PowerPoint, I would like to just go back to the little film that you can see, which tells you a bit about music at SOAS, before I go back into the PowerPoint and give you some specifics about the way that we look at musical instruments as a window onto the world. So here we go. I should have put that on full view. Sorry, there we go. Okay, I'm just going to play that once more. It's only 40 seconds, but I think it's worth having a look again. Here we go. Okay, well, I'm sure you'll agree that the diversity of music there, which are all musics that we teach at SOAS, that we teach and we study at SOAS, this is really unique to this particular university. So if you're interested in any of the things you saw, from Timbuktu to Japan to Kathmandu to Cuba, these are all things that we teach here in the School of Arts, in the music unit of the School of Arts. So back to the PowerPoint. Here what you see is, this is the kind of opening slide of the course outline, at least it was for this year. These are two musicians from Madagascar. One of the things that we do in this course is we look a lot at the historical, geographical, and cultural and linguistic background to music. So musical instruments are a really good way of, it's a window onto history and language and culture and geography. And that's what we do in this course. You can see here we have a guitar. Everyone knows what a guitar is. Guitars have been adopted and adapted around the world, but they're often side by side with older, more traditional, purely local instruments. This is a type of zither from Madagascar, it's called lokanga, and it's unique to Madagascar. By the way, I used to present a program called World Roots on BBC Radio 3. I did that for 13 years, and we went around the world. We visited many countries, often in quite remote locations, and recorded music and talked to musicians, and always had a guide from the culture. And many of the photos that I will be showing you come from those extraordinary trips, which I have to say I've been very, very lucky to have experienced, and they have given me a lot of insight into music. So here you have lokanga, this very unique instrument, unique to Madagascar, which is already a place of incredible biodiversity, but it plays side by side with the guitar, but the guitar has been locally made and locally adapted to musical styles. So one of the things that we look at in sounds and cultures is the what you might call organology, the study of the classification of musical instruments. So these are all chordophones, that is the primary sounding device is a string strung between two points. So here are different types of chordophone. These are lutes. This is a lyre, which is a very ancient instrument. It comes from the ancient world, and nowadays it's really only found mainly found along the Nile River, which from a historical point of view is very interesting because it shows the connection of East Africa to the ancient world, from Sumeria to Egypt and so on. These are harps. These are also connected with the ancient world, going way back, thousands of years. So even looking at the classification of instruments gives us a window onto history and the way that places have been connected around the world for millennia. What are the objectives and what is the scope of this course, Sounds and Cultures? Well, first of all, we want to highlight the role of musical instruments just as material objects that we can study. But through that, we are able to explore the deeper conceptual world of music in Asia and Africa and their diasporas. And we always emphasize the importance of looking at these musics from their own cultural worldview. It is their voice that we need to listen to in the way that we think about their music and understand their music. We are not imposing our own systems. We look at it from their point of view. So we also focus in this module, but not in many other ones, we focus on quote unquote, problematic word, but traditional music, which you could also think of as music of heritage. So music that has not been globalized or has possibly been globalized but retains elements of heritage. Because musical instruments speak volumes about the history of a place. But we are also interested in transformations and adaptations. I gave you a little window of that in the first slide. And we look at the way that marketing and commercial and uh, digital platforms now have altered the way that musical instruments are played and sound, for that matter. So let's start with something, a specific example of this. This is a recording of the timbila. The timbila is a xylophone. It's a family of xylophones. So each xylophone has a particular range. This one is the bass timbila. Then this is the soloing timbila. This is a father and son. There you see the bass timbila in the background. So each instrument has its own role in this large orchestra, which is unique to one particular region in Mozambique. Let's listen to a bit of it. It's played by the Chopi people. So it's a big sound. It's a wonderful sound. It's a very rich sound. It's very interlocking. It's virtuoso. But we also look at it in terms of its meaning, its cultural relevance, the situations in which it might be performed. This is in many ways an endangered tradition. We also look at because the context is disappearing. We also look at the sound of the instrument, and I don't know whether you notice. We can talk about this afterwards, but that buzzing sound, it buzzes, and that's a form of amplification, a natural form of amplification. These are the buzzing devices. So you see each key has a gourd resonator underneath it, and a hole is cut in the gourd resonator. And then they put either a spider membrane or even a Rizla, which vibrates as the gourd resonates under the key when the key is hit, and it creates this buzzing sound. And I call that the aesthetic of the buzz. There are many cultures that use buzzing as a means of either sustaining the note or amplifying it. But it's part of an aesthetic. That is to say, it is a part of the sound that is enjoyed and appreciated. So what are we looking at in this course? We're looking at rhythms, because many musical styles and genres around the world, from the most traditional to the most popular and commercial, are identified and defined by their rhythmic patterns. And so rhythm is not just a label. It's something that governs life. We have the rhythm of life, and rhythm is intrinsically connected to language and dance. You saw in that little video of Fall in Love with Music at SOAS, you saw that when we at SOAS, we're not teaching dance necessarily, but dance is part of the way that music is enjoyed and appreciated in many cultures. And so where relevant, we dance. Um, Language, of course, is such an important part of rhythm and melody, and this is another thing that we look at. Um, Aesthetics. I've just touched on aesthetics with the Chopi Timbila xylophone orchestra, but how we look at how musicians fashion their own individual sounds and style. What is it? Why is it that when I hear, let's say, someone playing the kora, which is a 21 string harp that we teach at SOAS from West Africa, that I also play, within 2 or 3 seconds, I know exactly who it is that's playing. And it's just the way they touch the string. It's the sound of this. And that is what makes it an individual sound. And I'm sure all of you know in your areas of music that you know very well, you can immediately identify someone within a couple of seconds. And then how does sound and style and aesthetics, how does it change with technology? That's another big issue. So I did say that we looked at music from Asia, Middle East, and Africa, and their diasporas. So let's listen to a diaspora recording here from Recife in the north of Brazil, northeast of Brazil. And this is Renata Rosa. So what you're hearing there is this very high-pitched voice of a woman. Often the female voice is considered the best voice in many cultures. So she's quite high. If we wanted to analyze the aesthetics of her own style, this is in fact part of the general style of music from Recife. But she's also giving it her own personal imprint. And she plays it's called Habeca. It's of European heritage, but it's very influenced by the first settlements of Portuguese in Brazil, which was in the early 1500s. And they were already very, very influenced by North African and Arabic, Middle Eastern music. So we've got a great cultural mix there. This is one of the instruments that you learn at SOAS. It's tabla. I'm sure you have all heard the tabla in many ways. There's the kora. I'm sure you've all heard the tabla. So the tabla is a pair of drums. This is Sanju Sahai, who is a world-renowned tabla player. He is our tabla teacher. And even online, we have been able to teach this very effectively, because one of the fascinating things about tabla is the way that you can learn rhythms by vocalizing them. And it's a fantastic way of learning about rhythm and rhythmic structure. I studied Indian music at university, and I learned a lot about tal. Tal is the rhythmic structure of North Indian classical music. It's a fantastic tool. It's almost mathematical, but it's very musical as well. So once again, there are so many ways that we can look at this instrument. We can look at it historically. We can look at it culturally. We can look at its heritage in the Mughal Empire. We have many fantastic classes on Mughal Empire and its impact on musical traditions in North India. So back to Madagascar, we saw that in the first slide. Let's have a quick look at this instrument, which is considered the national instrument of Madagascar. So once again, this tells us so much about the history of this island, because the island was actually, it was uninhabited until something like, 1500 BC, and then it was settled by people who came from Indonesia on outrig boats, and they settled on the island of Madagascar. And then there was a lot of cross influence with East Africans who were also on the island, came to the island. So here, first of all, we have, this is the traditional vali, as it's called. It's spelled valiha, but it's pronounced vali. And this is an adaptation of it. Both of these are zithers. That's how they would be classified. They're chordophones and they're zithers. But each string has only one note. Let's listen to a duet. We had a marvelous session on the Malagasy Marovan, that's this instrument, and the Vali in our course, Sounds and Cultures, this year. It's a curious instrument because it looks unlike anything else you've ever seen, but there's something uncannily familiar about the sound of it. When I first heard it, I completely fell in love with this instrument. And I still am absolutely mesmerized by it. I think it's one of the great musical traditions of the world. So another thing that we look at is oral transmission, the way that music is passed down from one generation to the next. And I would suggest that, in all musics, there's a huge amount of oral transmission that is not notated, even in Western classical music. We learn many aspects of sound and performance and style that are not taught through notation, that can only be learnt by listening and performing. And so I have done a particular study in West Africa on the way that children learn informally in specialist musical families, and they learn by osmosis, that is, just by, or enculturation, you could say, just by being there and hearing the music around them. They also learn by imitation, and they learn from their fellow peers, from children of their age, as well as from adults, much the way they learn instinctively, much as one learns language. Gender and music, this is another theme. Why is it that some instruments are considered feminine or should be played by women, and others instruments are masculine and should be played by men? And in most cases, there's no biological explanation for this gendering of musical roles. So there's the gamelan. You saw that in our in the Falling in Love with Music film. This is tuned percussion. This is our gamelan. This is our gamelan teacher, Andy Channing, a brilliant teacher who's been studying and performing gamelan for 3 decades. And with gamelan, you learn all the different instruments. It's quite a skill. So we also learn about authenticity and ownership. Who has the right to play instruments of cultural heritage? And when does borrowing become cultural appropriation? What indeed is considered authentic, and why? And who are the composers, if anyone? So these are a couple more slides for you to look at. Let's just end on this one.
Su gelerek yahar gider Durnalara katar gider Bu dünyaya bir göz Her gelene bahar gider Ay aman 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 Ay aman aman aman
So I think that is where we will end. I'll just go back to that slide just to say that Azerbaijan has a very rich tradition of music. It's called Mugham. It situates Azerbaijan really in the crossroads at the beginning of Central Asia. But it also is connected with Europe. And this is music which is based on a drone, just the maintaining of one single note, which roots you in that. There's no harmony in this music, and with incredible vocal skills. So I would now like to invite you to, oh yes, and there, join us for music in September 2021. And that's my email. That's me. I'm BA Music undergraduate admissions tutor. So let me go out of that, and then I will stop share and invite questions.
And just a reminder as well, everyone, that we're also joined by Mao Nakano, our student ambassador as well. So if you've got questions for Professor Duran, but also if you have questions relating to the SOAS student experience, or perhaps what it's like to learn during the pandemic era, then of course also address those to Mao.
So let me start by asking you a question, if I may. How many of you have heard any of the music that I've that I've just played on the PowerPoint? Have any of you heard any of the music that I played? I'd love to know what your experience of music outside the Western tradition is. Um, okay.
If you don't want to speak, by all means use the Q&A, where you can just type in your questions that way, and then I'll send them over to Professor Duran so she can answer them. Perhaps maybe Lucy, you could just talk a little bit about when you joined SOAS, and what you find sort of so special about the institution.
Well, you saw at the end of that film, only at SOAS. That is really our motto, certainly in the music section of the School of Arts, because there is no other place. There's no other place in the world where you can study music with the approach and the diversity that we have at SOAS. So for me, it was there was nowhere else where I could possibly be. Where else could I study and learn about and teach the music of everything from Central Asia to Brazil and Cuba? There really isn't anywhere else, because unlike most music departments, we're not sort of an appendage to a Western classical music department. So this is it. But we do have a relationship with King's College London. So in some circumstances, you might be able to take a course down at King's College, which is more of a kind of has more of a classical orientation.
Great. We've had a couple of things in the Q&A, Lucy. So an observation first from Maya, who says that she hadn't heard the Madagascar music. So
Mao, yeah. Oh, good. Maya or Mao?
I think it's Maya. But
Maya.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good. Well, I think the music of Madagascar is very special, and it's such an interesting, such a fascinating island. It's been very isolated, and that's why you have a lot of biodiversity. But so the music has developed within that biodiversity, but it also, and it's very, very creative, but it also reflects the mix of from Indonesian music, with contemporary music, with music from East Africa. So it's a really very, very creative music. You often find that where there's a kind of confluence of different cultures, something very dynamic and creative comes out of that. And that's my feeling about the music of Madagascar.
Lovely. Thank you, Lucy. And Sydney has asked, do students get to choose an instrument to learn and focus on as part of the music program?
Yes, they do. In your first year, you have a choice of 3 instruments. You can you can well no you don't have a choice. You learn 3 instruments. You learn gamelan, then you learn tabla, and then you learn kora. This year, gamelan has been difficult to teach online, but both tabla and kora we've taught, I think, very effectively this year online. And for instance, with tabla, many of the students have been able to get hold or borrow their own tabla, which they have at home. With the kora, it's more difficult to get hold of an instrument. We have 15 of them at SOAS, and as soon as we're able to go back into campus, we will be using those instruments. But meanwhile, people have been, again, very creative. We're all learning to sing the songs in the language, which is Mandinka, and because it comes from Gambia, Senegal, and our teacher is Kajali Kouyaté, who's from Senegal. But but we've also been learning to play it on violin. Some of them have been playing on violin, some have been playing on guitar. Um, so I'm asked if I know anything about Kurdish folkloric music. Um, mm, Personally, yes, I've certainly heard quite a lot of Kurdish music, but it's not an area that I know a great deal about. We have one of my colleagues, Rachel Harris. She teaches music of Central Asia. She plays um, the is it called? Well, saz is sort of a generic name for musical instruments, but there's another dutar. She plays dutar. She's learnt in the Uyghur tradition of northwest China. I didn't finish the question about musical instruments now that I remember. So that's what you do in your first year. And in your second year and third year of music, you choose your own instrument. And we find you, or you might already have a teacher, and you continue with that instrument. And so, we have people learning trumpet, but they're not learning Western classical trumpet. They're learning jazz trumpet. They're learning Cuban trumpet, uh, so, or Caribbean, different trumpet in different Caribbean styles. So that's how the instrumental tuition works at SOAS.
We have about 10 minutes left and a couple more questions in the chat, Lucy. Leon has asked, can one learn an instrument while taking a degree focused on something else?
Okay. For credit, that can be difficult. It depends. It really depends on how big you can do it at first year level. You can do it as an open option or a guided option. But for second and third year, no, this is not possible. It's not possible to do an instrument study where you choose your own instrument and you choose your own teacher, because we pay for that, and so those funds go only to music students. If you are interested enough in music, I suggest you do a combined degree, music and whatever other subject you want to do. Creative arts, BA creative arts students can do instrument tuition. That's part of their degree,
Great.
if they choose.
Okay, next question, and forgive me if I get the pronunciation wrong on this, from Lewin Sanders. Do you run into problems when studying different traditions with separate tuning systems and switching between them?
That's a very interesting question. I think initially people find this difficult. If you've been brought up in one tuning, in this country, in the West in general, we're used to a tempered scale, the scale of 12 notes on the piano, which are equally divided, absolutely equally divided. And of course, that's only 200 years old, the tempered scale. And before that, it was not like that. So fifths would be done on a cycle of fifths. So basically, that tends to be our kind of measuring, our sort of, we have a template in our heads for tuning. But I think as soon as you get into any other musical tradition, I mean, even into, I don't know, English folk music or Irish music or the blues, or certainly many cultures in Africa and Asia and the Middle East have diminished, slightly flattened thirds, what's it called, a neutral third, and that kind of thing. So this is part of the aesthetic. It's part of the learning process. You get your ears around it. I'm perfectly happy switching from one to the other, but I've had a lifetime of exposure to music from different parts of the world. It doesn't bother me at all. I love it. I relish it, and I think most of our students do too.
Great. Okay, two more questions in the function, and we've got about 6 minutes left, Lucy.
Okay, I don't know why I can't see the questions in the chat box.
I think you have the chat open, but there's a
Q&A.
Q&A box, which is slightly
So
different.
sorry.
But I can read it out to you. So
Ah,
Leon has asked, on the, can you
it's
see it if you scroll down?
yes, yes, and I've just seen that that's Maya Julevi. Hi, Maya. How nice to see you here. If you come to SOAS, you will learn about Madagascar and Malagasy music. So, okay, I see. Ewan Sanders, do you run into problems? Oh, no, no, we've already done that. Leon.
Yes, it's the one below.
Well, Leon, you got me there. The connection between rhythm and language, do you support the soft Sapir-Whorf hypothesis? I don't know what that is. Can you tell me? I confess ignorance, total ignorance. I could do a quick Google, but that would be silly. So rhythm and language and tonal language. I mean, the tonality of languages is a very strong connection there. Leon, do you want to talk to me about that?
Yeah.
Good.
So the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is a linguistics hypothesis. Basically, there is a distinction between soft and hard. Hard is that people who speak different languages essentially perceive the world as a result of that in fundamentally different and irreconcilable ways, which is mostly rightfully ostracized in academia now. But the soft hypothesis is that the languages you speak influence your perception of the world in a non-trivial manner. And that includes music.
That's very interesting. I mean, I was brought up on two languages. I was brought up on Spanish and English, but then we moved to Greece when I was a teenager and I learned Greek. And all I can tell you is that when I'm, depending on whether I'm speaking, and then I learned Mandinka in West Africa, and I speak all of them fluently. And I speak French as well. So when I'm, depending on which language I'm in, I'm kind of a different person. I'm certainly a very different person when I'm talking in Spanish. And so I think language gives you an insight into culture. Speaking a language, it also, I think you don't just translate from your own language. You enter the headspace of the language that you're speaking, which gives you almost, it's like a different character. And so I think language is it is doesn't separate us. I think if we know more than one language, which is that, then you can join up a lot of dots. I'm not sure if that has any relevance to what you just said, but certainly when we learn music at SOAS, we learn, if we're learning songs, we're learning in the language and we're learning what the various meanings are. Often they're not surface meanings, they are deep metaphorical meanings. So language is really important when you study music. And
Lucy, we have just about 2 or 3 minutes left, and we've got one final question about what instruments will we learn from East Asia. So if we could address that, and then we'll have to close the session.
Fine. Well, you don't learn, well, East Asia, gamelan is of course from Southeast Asia, and that one you learn from year one. And we have one third year student who has continued with gamelan, with Balinese gamelan, and she's now very, very proficient. She's professional now in gamelan. She plays the gendère. In your second year, so that's first year, but that is Southeast Asia. In your second and third years, you can learn any instrument that you want, providing there's a teacher. So you can learn this. We have a lot of students who are very interested in Korean music. There's kayagum, which is the zither. and there are a number of other instruments that you can learn from East Asia. Silk and bamboo is a type of ensemble from Shanghai, which we teach at SOAS, and that's the erhu, the 2-string fiddle, the flute, I think it's called dizu, and various other instruments. It's really open. You can choose what you want to learn from year 2. So, the world's your oyster.
Great, lovely. Well, I think that brings us to a close. Lovely on time for the session. So, well, thank you very much, Professor Duran, for a wonderful presentation, very illustrative as well, and with the video and the audio, so that was wonderful. And thank you to all of our attendees for joining us today. If you have any more questions, please do feel free to get in touch with us. You can email the study@SOAS inbox, and if there's anything for Lucy, we will forward that on to her. We'll be sending recordings out in the next few days, so if you can revisit anything.
And can I thank
Lovely.
Mao? Can I thank Mao for joining us? If you have any particular questions, Mao might be able to help you because she's from another department, but she has been taking my music course on Atlantic Africa, West African and African music, popular music. And thank you all for joining us. Maya, I do hope to see you this year, this coming September. I hope to see all of you and meet all of you this coming September. Okay, thanks a lot. Take care and see you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone.